All right, here we go with our review and critique, demo tutorial, whatever you want to call it, of the Grayscale stuff. I'm sorry it's running a little late. It's been a bizarre last couple of weeks. I hope yours has been a whole lot nicer. Before we start, I want to let you know I think you did some really superior stuff here. This conversion to Grayscale is wonderful. I don't know whether that's because of, in some cases, the black and white class has really set you up for this. I don't know. But whatever it is, you guys did some really super stuff. I think we can get through these maybe in 2 parts. And because they are so good, for the most part, there are only a few of them where I really have anything I think I can do to add to it. That doesn't mean I won't want to play with them, but I still think we can go through them pretty quickly. So let's get going. Wow, this is really a beautiful example of a toned Grayscale print. You've really done some very, very nice work here. The tonalities are beautiful. The toning seems appropriate. I think the only thing I would do is look at a couple of potential distracting areas, which would include this, maybe this leaf. Here's our picture right in here. This is the core of what this is about. So the first thing I would do to tighten this up a little bit, and I do mean a little bit, is maybe get rid of those 2 things and to bring our composition back down a little bit. I'll bring this here, and now you can see the heads of these 2 flowers are pretty close to our thirds area, and they're bracketed top and bottom. So I'm going to take that, and then I'm just going to do something very simple. The burning and dodging tools work really good in Grayscale because there's not much color for them to mess with. So let's get a smaller brush here and just darken this board a little bit. And that's just so the flowers stand out a little more. I'm going to bring that back down a touch. Maybe this. And there we are. That's all I would do to it. I think this is really, really a very nice print. So good job. What an interesting, enigmatic, mysterious shot this is. I think this is, the concept of this shot, I think is really, really good. The only thing I would do is, because this hutch or chest or whatever it is clearly our main object, I would bring it out just a little, and I might get rid of a little of this distracting stuff on the side. That's all really minor. Let me do that first. If you're going to crop it, and you know you're going to crop it, then do that first, because it brings the file size down and makes it easier to work with. If you're not sure, if you want to wait until you've done other work, then wait and do it later. But if you do know, do it in advance. Now all I'm going to do is duplicate this, make this a screen layer, and we've got a lot more stuff in there. I'm going to bring the opacity down just a little. Now, I liked the darker surroundings and backgrounds in the original. They're a little too light here. It's starting to distract. So, what are we going to do? We all know what we're going to do. We're going to make this in this case, a reverse layer mask, holding down the Alt key. Now I'll need to use a white brush. I'm going to come in and lighten this up just a little. My brush is only at 16% because I want to be pretty subtle, and I would rather do this multiple times, building it to where I want it, rather than get it too much and screw it up. So the only thing I would like to do now is darken the surroundings. If this were color, I would do another layer mask with a multiply layer, but because it's black and white, because I can play with the burn tool without screwing up the color, I am going to raise the exposure a bit on this and make my brush bigger and softer. And we'll flatten the layer. And now we've got that background to stand out like there's a light on it, like there's something really interesting. I'm assuming this is a composite. If it is, it's beautifully done. You really did a interesting job with this concept. I think it's very much worth playing with and seeing what your take on it would be, not just mine. So let's go to the next one. Oh, here we have a nice outdoor scene. Looking through the haze, you can see there's haze in these background mountains. I think it would be nice to give this a little more contrast. We could do that in a couple of ways. We could do it with a curves dialog, but maybe let's try it a simple way. Let's go in and do this with a soft light. Remember, this is just like an overlay that builds contrast, but it's not as strong. Oh, looky there. Now, let's lower this just a hair. And now we've got much better tonalities in here than we had before. Here was the original. It's kind of muddy. And here was the one that we just beefed up a little bit with that one simple trick. Nice shot. Let's go on. Oh, this is interesting. It has a coal tone. That was quite possible in the old days in black and white. You could get toners in all kinds of different colors. And cool tone or a cold tone was one of those. It really adds, I think, a little bit to this architectural shot. The only thing I would have done, but would have to start in the color layer, is I might have darkened that sky a little bit using luminosity, bring that blue down, and then tackle this. The rest of this is really pretty nice. The lines are straight. The tones are good in the various colors of the building. Nice job. Nice job. Here we have one where we could play with the tones a little bit, but this really needed to be done in the conversion to camera raw. Here in these birds, in their feathers, they are so bright. But I would bet that in the original of this, in your raw picture, if you brought that into ACR and brought the highlights down, you'd put a lot of detail back in these feathers. And I think that would help this picture amazingly. Now, at this stage, all I can do is darken this. I can add gray to it. Whoop-de-doo. That's just going to muddy up the picture. It needs detail, not tone. So that's the kind of thing you could do pretty well in the camera raw version. And then I would go around, and there are a couple of distracting elements I would get rid of. I would get rid of these branches here. Now I could just tone them down like this. Or I could have used the spot healing brush and just gotten rid of them. But now we don't have those distracting things. Here we could darken this a little bit. Maybe over here a little. But we just need more detail in the bodies. Nice concept, though. Oh, it's Spider-Man. My spidey sense is telling me you needed to drop the exposure a little on this one. Or, like the last one, in camera raw, use the highlights sliders to bring down the highlights so that up here on his head, you can start seeing the detail and the top edge of his head over on his eye and here on his shoulders. We need to bring that in a little bit. Compositionally, man, you've got this incredible directional line here, kind of aimed at his head, almost like, since his head is cocked a little bit, like he's ducking it. And over here we have him crowded into the corner. One thing I would do is probably get rid of this line. I'd use the spot healing brush and just take it out. All it does now is distract you from the other stuff in your picture. Oh, the old Millennium Falcon in here. Where's the little tiny Han and Chewie to sit in this? Again, you could use a highlight adjustment right in here to bring down the detail on the ship right here. That would be really helpful to the overall shot. Does anyone know what in the original one this feature was, this round circular feature. Over here is the cockpit. What was this, if anything? But anyway, so this captured the idea of it being out in space. Sunlight is very harsh. This would probably be a fairly realistic lighting for out in space. Of course, in Hollywood, you'd get a lot of fill light from some unknown source, but this works pretty well for that. Makes it look like it's adrift in space. This would have been a good one to composite with a nice star scene behind it. Very nice. Very nice. Skyline scene. Looks like something out of Walker Evans. Here we've got the modern city in the background, and below it the tenants or whatever this is that doesn't quite live up to this. But this is a fascinating juxtaposition of these two parts of this city. Very cool. Good concept. Nicely pulled off. The only thing I would do is want to open some of this up. I don't know if we can do it with just the Dodge tool, but let's find out. See if there's anything there. Yeah, there's a little bit there. You've got to be careful because can you see what's happening? It's bringing up everything, which means it's also bringing up shadows, and that makes it look pretty dull. So I'm going to take this back a step. This would have been one. Remember how I've been saying to use the highlight slider to bring those highlights down? Well, in ACR, you can use the shadow slider to bring these shadows up. The odds are really good that there is detail in the file, in the raw file, in those shadow areas. And that'd be worth trying to get. Cool idea for this. Great eye. Let's go on now. Oh, this is stunning. Very, very nice. This is like Michael Kenna meets Edgar Allan Poe. I mean, this is a very interesting thing. The only thing I would do is straighten up this skyline and the horizon line a little. But I love what you've done with the long exposure, the hard light coming from this side. This is really beautifully done. This would make a very, very nice wall hanging print. Probably would make you some money if it got seen in the right place. Okay, so that's part number 1. We polished that off pretty quickly. I'll go get this edited and then tackle part number 2. See you then.